In low orbit above Earth is an asteroid, and on top of that asteroid are two large towers. The killer drum and bass soundtrack setting the mood, and the infamous
Headshot.
This episode of Level Design Deep Dive needs no formal introduction. You all know this level. It's Facing Worlds. One of the best multiplayer maps ever made, and when standing the test of time, this level is extremely iconic. Back in the day at LAN parties, my friends and I played this level for many hours on end, hectic capture the flag matches. Today's episode of Level Design Deep Dive, I figured I would talk about the level of Facing Worlds and the evolution across the Unreal franchise, similar to my episode on Deck 16. Facing Worlds was created by Cedric Fiorentino, who went by the online handle of Inox. The level first appeared in Unreal Tournament on November 30th, 1999. 20 years ago, this classic level was created and is still loved by not only the Unreal community, but majority of gamers in other communities as well. Facing Worlds has seen remakes in Halo Forge, Counter-Strike, and many different games out there. As mentioned in the introduction, the level has two large towers on opposite ends of an asteroid. Symmetrical in design, it gives both teams a fair advantage. However, there are some small differences, though helpful to denote which side of the level you are on. In the center of the level, looking at the red tower, it has a large white accented material for the front entrance, and green trim along the edges of the tower. The blue tower has a solid stone material for the front entrance, and continued stone material for the trim of the tower. And of course, there are the red and blue flames inside and outside of each base to denote which side of the level you are on, just in case you forgot. In terms of level flow, it is quite simple, with no clutter, nor excessive number of paths to get from one tower to the other. The core flow is basically a figure-8 pattern looking from a top-down perspective. The spawn points of the level are behind each respective tower. The displacement works well to give players the protection of the large towers, as a sightline blocker from enemy snipers in the opposing tower. However, as soon as players step away from the spawn area to the open space, it is fair game to get picked off, but things are not so lopsided upon spawning. Near the player there are two weapon pickups, a Ripper on one side and a sniper rifle on the other. The sniper rifle allows spawning players a quick chance to get a ranged weapon and counter-snipe any enemy players who may be stalling their team's forward momentum. For close quarters defense or player push, the Ripper allows players to get up close and personal to nearby enemy players in their respective bases, to either stop a flag steal or have some means of defense. Inside the base, the players can find a rocket launcher and a shock rifle. Along with these two weapons, there are several health packs and, more importantly, the flag that needs to be defended from the enemy team. Given the small space of the interior of the tower, it is quite easy to post up a strong defense with either the rocket launcher or the shock rifle, as there is only one way in and one way out of the flag room. Inside the flag room there are three teleporters, each leading to a different location vertically within the tower, and offering different vantage points to defend the flag for both teams. The centermost teleporter goes to the very top of the tower. At the top of the tower, the players can find a sniper rifle, extra sniper ammo, and an armor pickup. This is the place to be. From here you can see everything, and this is where most people post up to get the headshots on opposing players. Like the rest of the map, it is still very open and exposed, so standing still at the very top not only gives you an advantage, but makes you a very easy target for an opposing sniper standing on their tower. To the left and right of the shock rifle are two additional teleporters. The one on the left takes you to the Redeemer, which is fun to use and pilot across to the opposing tower to get several kills at once. The teleporter on the right takes you toward the center of the tower, where there is another sniper rifle and additional sniper ammo to defend your side of the level. In the center of the level, there is a mega health. The placement is a classic setup for risk versus reward. Out in the open with no cover, the risk is very high to get sniped, but getting the mega health is valuable for a flag run, as with the added health, your chances of survival from running tower to tower is increased. On the subject of the center of the map, the layout is quite simple, with two paths, so it is basically a straight shot to either tower. The midpoint of the two paths is slightly raised, which at ground level creates a blind hill, so to speak. You cannot really see what is ahead of you. The sightline break adds tension from the ground level, but with teammates helping from above, sniping from their vantage points, you can easily help those on the ground pushing for flag runs and captures. Given that the distance between each tower is a hike and a risky one, there is the additional benefit of the translocator. The translocator is a tool that allows players to quickly teleport themselves around the map without walking, and in Facing Worlds this comes in very handy. The translocator can also be used to get down to the very top of either tower by firing a disc to the ground below and teleporting to it when it lands. As a caveat, you cannot teleport with the flag. That would be too easy. Using the translocator with the flag is dropped. The translocator is also handy to grab the U damage, which in this level is hidden above the flag room. With some of the points mentioned, this is why Facing Worlds works, not just from the point of simplicity, but from the design of balance and combat and flow between tower sniping and ground combat. Both are required to hold control over this map. If one team just focuses on sniping, which in itself is quite fun, on this level they lose all ground level defense to protect the flag. Likewise, if one team just focuses on a flag run push, they're easily picked off by opposing snipers. The balance of teamwork and team roles between ground assaults and covering sniper fire allows for the hectic push and pull of CTF gameplay, making Facing Worlds such an iconic level. Now this is just only the first iteration. Facing Worlds got a visual change with Facing Worlds 2. Also made by Inox, this revision is a bit different, but still has the core ideas of what makes Facing Worlds awesome. The first thing to note is Facing Worlds 2 is the visual change. It's a bit more high-tech and industrial, but the core of the simplistic path and two towers remains the same. However, the two towers this time around have more negative space and are not 100% solid structures, so the layout has a different setup when it comes to spawning. Instead of spawning behind a solid building, players now spawn under the tower and take elevators up to the center of their respective bases. Though this is not the only spawn location in the level, as players can spawn at different locations at their respective towers, avoid the chances of being spawn sniped. Once in the core gameplay space, the level presents itself as being more open, with several ways in and out of each base, which is in contrast to the original level that had only one central way in and out of each base. In each base, players can arm themselves with a sniper rifle, rocket launcher, or shock rifle to defend the base or push forward for a flag capture. Behind the flag, players can find the power-ups of a shield belt and armor, both of which can be beneficial for defensive or offensive gameplay. Like the original level, there are teleporters, but instead of 3, there are now just 2. One takes players to the very top of the tower, and the other to the middle of the tower, both having sniper vantage points. The Redeemer is still present in the level, but no longer accessible via teleporter. It is located above the central flag room, and to get to it, players can either drop down from the very top and take some fall damage, or translocate to it. Facing Worlds 2, the center path still has a raised middle section, which acts as a sightline blocker, and at the very top of the elevated section in the middle, the Mega Health is still present. A key difference to note between Facing Worlds and Facing Worlds 2 is the flag placement. In Facing Worlds, it's off to the side, safely behind the corner of the main entrance. Facing Worlds 2, it is more exposed and easily accessible for being captured. With more elements removed from Facing Worlds to Facing Worlds 2, the gameplay is more risky, but the core essence of the fun factor and flow of Facing Worlds still exists in a different visual style. On the subject of different visual styles, let's move on to the next iteration of Facing Worlds, seen in Unreal Tournament 2003. Welcome to Facing Worlds 3. The first thing that stands out is the art style and lighting. The desert-like setting and Egyptian art set gives this rendition of Facing Worlds a completely different look. Before I begin the discussion about Facing Worlds 3, you have to give credit where credit is due. Doing environment art is not easy, and despite some of the hindrances to the gameplay, which I will discuss, the level art does look fantastic, and props to the level artists involved in creating the visual look set. So right off the bat, the biggest change is that Facing Worlds 3 is a much larger level compared to Facing Worlds or Facing Worlds 2. As mentioned, the theme is now more Egyptian, but still has a visual design of the two towers on an asteroid. However, it is no longer set in outer space and has more of a floating desert vibe more than a floating rock feeling of the original level. Aside from the obvious visual changes, the center of the level is quite different, with a large pyramid in the middle which serves as a map divider and sightline blocker. From the top down, the figure 8 shape still exists, but is larger in terms of spacing compared to the original level. In addition, the center pyramid and the path around it adds a secondary small circular loop. The core walking distance without the use of the translocator or included jump pads almost feels like it's double that of the distance of the towers in the original level. Jump pads in the level do help to get across quickly, but they're only one directional, meaning you can launch yourself about halfway from your base or the enemy base. The layout is quite different, not just between the towers, but within the flag bases themselves. Structurally, the bases are more secure, as a large open hallway of the original level is gone and replaced with a smaller door under the base of the statue. Once inside the first hallway, it is a bit claustrophobic, but it does work to catch flag runners trying to leave the base. Going left or right leads to the main flag room, which is quite large. That seems to be the overarching thing with Facing Worlds 3. The scale is increased, and the downside is that the player models are smaller, thus giving things a off-scale kind of feel when playing the level. Inside the flag room, there's not only one, but 3 floors, which does work for aggressive flag defense, but requires much more focus to watch all sides when attempting a flag run. The flag room teleporters are still there, but further away from the flag. with 2 on each side for a total of 4. Both sets of teleporters take players to a higher location in their respective towers. But in this rendition of Facing Worlds, the sniper rifle is gone and replaced with a lightning gun. A thing to note that there's not only the front door under the statue, but 3 other doors for a total of 4 ways into either base. The 3 other doors are near the player spawn pads, each leading towards the center flag room and housing different weapon pickups. The Redeemer has been moved away from each base, respectively, and placed on one side of the center pyramid. The other side of the pyramid has a random pickup of a mega health or armor. This placement does make it more of a gamble to run to the center to get the power weapon along with a power, armor, or health, as opposed to having the Redeemer being securely spawned in respective team's base. Facing Worlds or Facing Worlds 2, when attempting a flag run, though difficult, it is still possible to easily get into an enemy base. Getting out is always the hard part. Here in Facing Worlds 3, it almost seems difficult just to get into the enemy base from the front door. The reason is that there are extra details at the front. I understand the purpose they serve as a defensive wall, and it creates a more narrow path to get to the front door. But from a gameplay intention it works, but comparing it to the original level, it seems like visual clutter getting in the way of the intended flow. Another thing to note when playing this level is that the iconic drum and bass soundtrack has been replaced for a more somber Egyptian themed music. It does fit the visual style, but it takes away from the high octane tension felt from the original level. Honestly, I don't mean to be negative about Facing Worlds 3 for the sake of being negative. The map still works and plays decently well and has the workings of a great CTF map. People played it when the game was released, and probably some servers still have it running today. However, the points mentioned do deter it from being a true next step with the improved Unreal Engine features from UT99 to UT2K3 of the original Facing Worlds. But all is not lost. With the release of Unreal Tournament 2004, Classic Face was released alongside Facing Worlds 3. So for those who wanted a more classic design with updated tech, the answer was there. And Facing Worlds 3, the players who enjoyed that map, their map was still in the rotation. Face Classic is pretty much the same as the original level, but with updated graphics. Though there are 2 key things to note. One is the center path. Yes, it is very similar to what we are used to from Facing Worlds, but seems to have more of an additive design. To understand this, let's look at Facing Worlds from the point of view of a base exit looking out. As you can see from the exit of the base, the center path, there is a clear gap in the asteroid, and the 2 paths are defined left and right. In Face Classic, there's more of a hill in front of the base, which makes it a bit harder to see the left and right path. It's not a big deal, as most players do know the layout of Facing Worlds, and the hill does create another sightline blocker. But there's a difference to note between the original design and the remake in Unreal Tournament 2004. The second problem is that problem of scale, which is still relevant as it was with Facing Worlds 3. And this is just a problem of the game. The player models were smaller and they make the levels feel larger than they have to be. And I think this was fixed down the road with Unreal Tournament 2004, with the player models being increased so they don't feel as tiny in the spaces that they exist. Next up, we have the iteration with Unreal Tournament 3 and the use of Unreal Engine 3. This iteration of Facing Worlds is most close to the original design. Visually, like Facing Worlds 3, it's no longer in space, and it has a more Asian architecture theme for the towers. Though, for not being in space, the skybox does have a nice visual touch to denote the red and blue sides of the level. The red tower has more natural lighting, hitting it with brighter colors, and the blue base has dark storm clouds, with the addition of some of the Necris architecture to distinguish it from the red base. There's not much really more to add to this iteration of Facing Worlds, except that it does feel like the classic redesign, with some of the improvements of Unreal Engine added to it. The only thing that is a bit off is the use of post-process. In my opinion, it does give the level a bit of a desaturated look. Doesn't affect the gameplay, but a visual preference some may like, others may not. The only real negative point I do have about this level are the spawn arrows that show up on the start of the match, pointing which way to go. I think this can be turned off in the settings, but as a first presentation it does feel very hand-holdy given how simple the layout of Facing Worlds actually is. Finally, we come to the most recent rendition of Facing Worlds in the current build of Unreal Tournament. As noted in my video of my own custom level DM Substation, this build of Unreal Tournament is kind of on hold, but it does have the level of Facing Worlds. I don't know who built it, but whoever built it did a fantastic job. Some of the new static meshes and visual designs are really cool. It's still not in outer space, but it's almost 100% the original design we saw 20 years ago. This build of Unreal Tournament also has some interesting gameplay improvements like the minimap before the start of the game and on death to show where things are located in the level. The pre-match lineup looks very interesting as well. Basically, Facing Worlds has seen the test of time for the last 20 years, and almost every rendition of Unreal Tournament has Facing Worlds in it, with a different design and take on the level. Regardless of the future, the map has a lasting legacy and will always be listed in any top lists of greatest maps ever made. Simplicity and straightforward design is a testament to that keeping things simple can pay off to creating classic and memorable gameplay. To this day, people still recreate the level in different map editors, which is again a testament to the legacy this level has. Hopefully, you all enjoyed this episode of Level Design Deep Dive, covering the evolution of Facing Worlds. Let me know in the comments below which version of Facing Worlds is your favorite, and if you have any fond memories of playing this iconic level. Always be sure to like and subscribe. Until the next video, cheers.